Hey there, everybody. Now we'll be serious as we goofed around for 5 minutes before we hit the record button. It is AT Town Hall. It is April 10th. It is our first meeting for the book, for our book study. So we're talking about, I always am afraid to hold it up because I know it's going to disappear from my background. Better Conversations, Jim Knight book. We were just talking before we hit record about how great the reflection guide is. If you have not purchased the reflection guide, I don't think it was overly expensive, but it's a nice addition to the book. It's actually really good. So hi, Cassie, how you doing?
I am lovely. I actually haven't gotten this book yet, so I'm just kind of listening today. It's on my list and it hasn't gotten here yet.
Right,
so.
That's fine. Well, we'll pique your interest for it, and it will certainly be worth it once it comes. So the thought as we went through, and I'll admit, look, I want you to look that I was prepared to lead the conversation, but I don't want to lead the conversation. How about that? I am fully prepared with conversation starters, but I do want us to be doing this together. The goal for today was to read the first two chapters, which was the intro, kind of the intro, I would call it, right? Yeah. Radical Brokenness and Better Conversations, and chapter 2, which started to get into the meat of it, which was the beliefs, which was talking about the Better Conversations beliefs, the 6 of them. So those are the notes that I took as we talk about that. I guess I'll go with a generic first starting question is thoughts right away. People who read it, thoughts that you want to share, something that you want to drop into the group, something you really enjoyed, something you're excited to read more about. You don't have to say anything. Lori, did you read the book? Not to question you, but directly, but you're the only one I haven't spoken to and Mary too.
Is it working this week? Nope.
You're working. You're working.
Oh, okay. I'm not seeing the little doohickeys.
Yeah,
I've been having technical difficulties. I have my book. I had good intentions of reading my book.
This was not meant to shame in any way. I'm just curious where people are at. That's fine.
Just didn't get there.
All right. Good. Mary said something I need to improve. Okay. Carolyn is here. Now we can officially start. Look, Carolyn, Sarah's all the way home already. No, she's not.
I love it. I already sent her a message. I was like, whoa, nice headset.
It is pretty cool, right?
With my kids.
I wondered. I was like, is that Owens?
I like it.
Yes.
She'll be landing a plane while we're talking also.
Yeah.
So, nice. So one of the first things that I pulled out of the first chapter, Carolyn, I'll hit you with it because you were excited about this. Carolyn actually texted me to be worried that she was going to be late. That's how excited she was about this. So that was nice.
Overall thoughts. But then did you see that Jim Knight's going to try to join us at a different one?
I saw. Cool. We'll have to give him the next
Yeah.
one so that maybe he can join us. That would be awesome.
So if we schedule it, we'll just send him a quick little tweet.
Yeah,
that's
that would be really cool. So, yeah. Carolyn, first overall thoughts. That's all we got to so far. Overall thoughts.
Sorry, I'm like running in because I was driving. I think a lot of it is just things where I'm like, oh, I'm doing things that I didn't realize had structure to it and had a name to it, which is nice. I'll pat on my back for that one. But still, I think a lot of room for growth. I'm excited to keep reading into the 10 different habits. I completely believed in the 6 beliefs that they went through in chapter 2, but yeah, I don't I'm gonna look through and find all my sticky notes because I read it and I have color-coded sticky notes. Like I used blue to match the blue. I was that excited about this book study.
I went green and purple because it was what the dollar store had, Easter color sticky notes. So that's what I got. Yeah, I do like the beliefs too. It's funny that you said that because when I started reading that chapter, I was like, oh, I like seeing these things that I sometimes think of kind of in a disconnected way, brought together over kind of one overarching thought process. That part I really liked as I went through. And we'll talk about the beliefs in a second, because I think that's really the power of it. Go ahead, sorry.
Oh no, I was just gonna say the first thing I highlighted was actually on page 2. of the book, and it's down towards the bottom. It says, when teachers are clearer, ask better questions, and foster dialogue, their students learn more. Similarly, when teachers listen, find common ground, foster trust, and make connections, students feel more psychologically safe. And I just think that's a really important thing for us to remember as AT consultants or whatever our roles are, is if we can foster dialogue and ask the questions, we're getting the people who we're in conversation with to be able to start thinking for themselves a bit more, to realize that they do have a lot of the skills and knowledge, and we're just kind of amping them up, empowering them to do better for themselves.
I like that you said my first sticky is on page 2. Carolyn, my first sticky is also on page 2. And it is a summation of that paragraph that says better conversations make coaches more effective. And I just kind of summed that all up for myself as I went through. And again, it's that idea of having things reinforced that you feel are important. It's that actual thing being reinforced for you, which I think is great. I'm trying to look at any of these. Yeah, a lot of it was about the beliefs. I'm reading my notes that I hadn't looked at since Thursday. So now I'm looking at them again. I had a big master plan to go through my notes earlier this morning too. So I was really ready. Let's just let that hang in the air. We know how that went, but that's okay. Let's just let that hang in the air.
I definitely also had that plan.
Some of the things, you know what I did do, and for people who haven't read the book yet, in the accompanying guide, which I can't talk up enough, in the first chunk of it, kind of in that introduction, they have a communication profile, which is fantastic. It's a where am I now? Where do I want to be? Kind of scaling. And then it's asking you a bunch of questions, things like I listen effectively, I build emotional connections, I ask questions effectively, people trust me. I might as well just read them all. I praise others effectively. I control my emotions effectively. I treat others as equals. My conversations are usually good for me and my partner. I frequently find common ground with other people. I am fully present in all conversations. I successfully redirect destructive conversations, and I collaborate effectively with others. Those are the headings. Here is.
And what I thought was really fun is the next page is actually like a peer review.
Oh my God, you just, yes, that's exactly the best part.
Hey friends, go forth and rate me. Like I could see maybe making I couldn't think of the word, anonymous Google form.
Yeah.
With that, and send it to people who I know wouldn't be like, you suck, you suck, you suck. Like, yeah, giving me some honest feedback.
I think it's really interesting. So yeah, so the peer review form is the same exact questions, but then it's asked from the perspective of someone else. Does this person listen effectively, build emotional connection? So it asks you to rate that person. Here's a rate a friend.
So I know someone who sent out, it wasn't this form, I think it was more about the partnership principles also from Jim Knight's work.
Yeah.
And so I think
I went to bed before
when it when it's showcased or when it's sent out, just to be aware that people might think that they're like, that you know who's submitting it, and that they're like, I'm gonna take it. It's because I'm going to come back and like ask you directed questions on like, what do you mean about this? Or what do you mean about that? And that it's more for your own personal growth, if that makes sense. Not just like, hey, like, give me all the good accolades. Like, tell me I'm doing all these amazing things. Because I think that also can backfire, because the person who I know sent out the survey like that now thinks that they encompass all of these partnership principles, when that is very much not the case. I
definitely would be copying the form and make it such that it didn't capture a email address, and that it was like 100% anonymous.
It would have to be.
Yeah. I think that's the only way to do it without it being without that after effect kind of happening.
I don't even know that I'd use Google Form as the platform in that case, because I think people would feel like they were being followed in a Google Form, even if you made it anonymous. So yeah, I think I might try something else. I thought about just a flat out paper form, like make a photocopy and say, here, just fill this out real fast. Or give this. The other thing I thought was, would I approach a group I was working with and ask my contact to share this with the group? And I don't know who did it, but someone in that group would be doing it. Same idea. So the links I put in the chat, I took the scales and put them into a Google form so you could fill it out and get a sense if you don't have the book yet, just so that you could see what it looks like. It is not anonymous in any way. I wanted to put it in there just to have it there so everybody could see it in case people didn't have it.
Well, one thing we might be able to do is, I don't know if everybody's open to this, is we could partner with people and, just in this group.
I think it would be interesting. I don't know. So I start to think about this and I wonder the depth of what we all know about each other. Would it give us the information? Now, granted, some of us know each other deeper enough that we could give feedback. I'll feedback Carolyn and Sarah all day long.
Well, you can randomize it.
I won't even be anonymous. I'll just flat out tell them what I think about it. But I don't, you know what I mean? I don't know if we've all had a deeper kind of experience of beyond this space sometimes. But Mary, I get what you're saying. I do like the idea of that partnering up and kind of thinking about, maybe it's a question of partnering up on the form as we fill it out on our own and share that about ourselves with another person to get some feedback. Like I looked at this form and I was like, oh, I really like these questions. And there's really some spots that I would want to focus my energy on because I don't think I do it nearly as well as I should. And so I liked that a lot. I almost broke my rule and wrote in my book. I never write in a book, but I almost filled the thing out in the book. And I was like, no, don't do it. Fight the urge. And I did. I fought the urge. I hate writing in my own books. I like, that's why it's all Post-it notes.
Especially when they had like 3 pages of blank lines.
Yeah, right. Exactly. I was like, no, don't do it. And that's the trick. That's what usually hooks me. I'm like, wait, there's like lines here. It's begging me to write in it. Don't do it. Sarah says, I could see reaching out to your person or people after we reflect and chat with them about our takeaways. Yeah, she's already going to do that with Carolyn. Nice. There you go. Perfect.
Yeah, I definitely was already thinking that. I was like, I wonder if Sarah and I could just chat about these. Like, hey, you tell me what you think I could improve on, and likewise. But I think, again, it kind of goes back to that level of trust that you have to have with somebody.
I think so too. I think to do that, just a flat on face to face, you would have to feel like, I don't even know that I want to tell all of you the ones that I don't feel particularly good about myself in. Like I was about to, and I was like, no, I'm gonna keep that to myself for right now. I don't know that I want to blast that out. But it did make me think about it, which was good.
Yeah, sharing that's kind of a catch-22 because I feel like you could say, oh, I don't think so. I'll give you one. Like, I don't think am as confident in successfully redirecting destructive conversations.
Oh my God, that's mine too. Carolyn.
And someone could be like,
So
oh,
there
no,
you go.
you do a great job. And I'm like, no, but I don't think I do that. Like, I don't want to hear, yeah, you do. So
Well,
Yeah,
and
exactly. I wasn't looking for that. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think there's a space that like we all are very hard on ourselves in our perception of ourselves. And so even if somebody external was saying, no, that's not the perception I have, like, I really feel like you do good in those, like, destructive conversations. I think there's some merit to the fact that even if they're seeing that, but we're not seeing it, that's really important because we have to be confident in the fact that we could handle a destructive conversation in order to do it successfully.
Right. I think that's part of it
Great
too,
point.
is that I just don't know that I would be able to handle one right as it came up. And I just know that I feel like that goes along my issue. Oh man, I'm just going to flat out tell you my issues. It goes along with my issue. I always feel, and anybody who's been part of a presentation with me knows this, I hate stopping conversation. Good, bad, or otherwise. I just really hate stopping conversation. I want to let people talk. Whether that's good or destructive at times, I'm always like, no, but they are talking at least. And that, I don't know that that's a good way to handle that. And for a fact, I know it's not a good way to handle it.
Well, and I think I think there are different vectors to, if we're staying on the destructive conversation end, because if it's a destructive conversation happening, let's say in an IEP meeting,
Mhm.
happens fairly bit in my neck
Mm.
of the woods. There's one way that I would handle a destructive conversation in that setting versus like our pre-conference at ATIA. I don't think there were destructive conversations, but there were maybe side conversations or topic conversations that were really good conversations, but destructive to the progress of the forward progress of the group. I would
Right.
handle that very differently. And in fact, I did. I just sat there going "Rrr," while everybody else let it happen. But in an IEP, or in a, if we're meeting to talk about AT, like I definitely don't want us to go down road destructive, because I feel like sometimes it's really hard to pull back members from
Yeah.
a destructive conversation when you're trying to problem solve a situation. And then you get stuck because you've got very diverse thinking, and pulling them back to, I don't know, a common ground is way harder if they've already walked all the way down destructive road.
And isn't it, Alyssa, that moment I always feel like I'm trying to walk people up to a tipping point moment. Like, because sometimes something really good can come from something that starts very destructive to the conversation. Like they might work themselves into a point where they do find by just natural conversation, a common ground or a common idea. And if you had shut that too early, you might have missed that. But if you wait too late, like you said, it's a boulder rolling down a hill and it's too late at that point.
And you can't really roll it back. And I think
Yeah. And so
the
it's
one, the
tricky.
one that's a struggle for me, like just to slightly transition us into the 6 beliefs, but like that last one that says conversation should be life-giving. I don't know how many meetings we've all been in that we walk out of and we're like, dang, that was life-giving. I don't know that, like, when I walk into a meeting, even if I feel like it might be contentious, that I walk away feeling like it was life-giving for anybody, let alone
Mhm.
me.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, if that's part of having better conversations, I absolutely see those other beliefs as happening out. But like, I don't know that in our work we're ever going to reach. I mean, it would be great where everybody walks away from a meeting. I keep using IEP meetings, but any meeting that in the work that we do, and feel like it was life-giving. Happens every
Yeah.
once in a while, but
I-
that's where contentious conversation and life-giving kind of battle for me.
Yeah, I do like some of the breakdown if we jump to that. So that is the 6th belief. Conversation should be life-giving. And I think that I do like some of the breakdown in the guide that talks about that one. And we'll work our way backwards. This is the beauty of us. We'll start at 6, we'll work to 1. I don't know. Maybe we'll talk about 2 next. I don't know. We'll just talk about them. But I do like that idea that some of the headings in that part of the guide, which I think are really good because it puts a flavor to this idea of life-giving, engagement, energy, well-being. I think when you think about those, I do like those as qualifiers for this idea of life-giving. When I think about, how many times have we gone in the past? It happens to me most times, not always, but most times, when I go to a conference and I say, I feel energized when I'm gone, when I'm done. That doesn't always happen, but a good set of sessions will do that. And that is life-giving. I mean, I know that there's been times where a trip to an ATIA will get me through into March or April. I'm like, remember that session, remember that. And I think those can be really helpful in trying to find ways to do that same thing, thinking about the flip side of it being the one giving that information to people. How do you do that so that they leave feeling energized? I'm going to give Kelly a big boost right now. She doesn't have our camera on, but that's okay. I'm going to do it anyway. Kelly was with us 2 weeks ago now for the pod training, and people left really excited. And I think that's really was something. Look, that'll get Kelly to turn her camera on. There you go. But Kelly, you know what I mean? Like you could feel it in the space. And Alyssa, you were there. So, and Peyton, you were there as well. And Naomi was there. You could feel people in the group like, oh, I'm excited to get back and do this. Like, and I think that's really that has potential for people. And so that could be life-giving.
Oh, absolutely. I think when I think about conversations with collaborative peers or partners, most of the time they land in life giving, which is why there's a really good collaborative peers or
Yeah.
partners. I think it's the more difficult conversations. Again, I always flip back to IEP meetings where, you're just, it seems so us versus them that I
Yeah.
think, do I feel like they increased my well-being, inspired me, imparted positive energy, or protected my self-esteem? No, probably the opposite of all those things happened in a meeting. We've all been in those where you feel like, you were up against the wall and people were throwing darts at you. That's the opposite of life giving. But when I think about problem solving conversations, absolutely, that's my goal. My goal is the parent, the family member, the student walk away feeling like, they were heard, they see a positive direction they can move in. And that, to me, it goes hand in hand with 3. I'm going to just jump us all around. Like,
I
sorry.
love it. I love what you're doing here.
what are you
Keep doing what
doing?
you're doing.
Because it's, other people should have a lot of autonomy, right? So like in conversation, and again, that's the whole goal of why we even be in the AT world to begin with, right? We want to encourage a learner and somebody, whoever, to have autonomy, right? That they're able to make their own choices and they're empowered to do things, and that comes out of conversation.
So if you haven't read the book yet, Belief 3, I believe other people should have a lot of autonomy. I'm a big fan of that little bonus in there, a lot. I like that because that's implying that you're letting them take charge of so much more. I really, really like that idea, like you said, Alyssa, and I do like that we're jumping around. The headings in that one that were in the guide talk about the idea of choice, decision-making, and outcomes. So giving people autonomy in those areas.
So
How
the
do we do
speech
that?
path in me, as I was reading it, Sarah and I, we really push forward with autonomous communication. I think I've said autonomous communication more times in my life than I ever thought I would be saying as a phrase, from pod into building blocks. And there's a definition of autonomy in there, like what it means to be autonomous. And I just sat there and I was like, this is what I'm trying to convey when we talk about our complex communicators being able to say what they want to say, when they want to say, how they want to say it, to whom they want to say it. And it doesn't always have to be on topic or exactly what I want them to say or think or feel or whatever. We think about, my 3-year-old yesterday, I was like, come here, I need to say something to you. And he's like, hold on, Mom, first I need to do a dance. And he did this like weird little dance in the living room and came over, and I was like, I love that you just had every right to do whatever you wanted
Yeah,
to do.
I mean,
to come over
that's going to get you through.
and how many times that we squash that because we're looking for an answer, or we want people to think the way we're thinking instead of really listening to what the other person has to say in order to listen to their autonomy and listen and how we can best work together on that.
Yeah, exactly. And Carolyn, that goes right with one of the questions that comes right out of the book, which is, are there times when you have made a decision for someone for their own good? And then was the outcome satisfactory? Right.
So,
and that goes back to Alyssa's statement about the IEP meetings and stuff. Sometimes, how many times are things done at someone as opposed to with someone? And that becomes a real struggle. Go ahead, Mary, jump in. Thank you for the hand raise. I did see it. It drew me right over. So well done.
Yeah, I don't want to interrupt too much, but building thinking classrooms, what you just said about autonomy, making choice, decision making, and outcomes. That class, building thinking classrooms, we need students to feel that way too. We need, to have like groups of 3 and not delegate roles, let them decide, let them negotiate the roles when they have the group, and have it randomized. Because if they start learning that early, then they're going to be much better communicators than we ever were.
Exactly. Mary, I thought of you the other day because Jennifer Gonzalez posted a blog post, an interview with Peter, the gentleman who does that book, The Thinking Classroom. I just put it in the chat. I'm not sure if it's a podcast episode too. I'd have to look. I haven't looked yet to see, but I know it was at least a blog post article. And it made me think of you right away. I was like, oh, that's the story that Mary was talking about. Yeah. Autonomy, or a lot of autonomy.
Mhm.
I couldn't stop smiling over the silliest little addition of 2 words there, a lot. It's like, oh yes, that's exactly it.
And
Um,
how do you define a lot?
that's the beauty of it. But what it's doing is, however much autonomy you're providing, it's forcing you to say, is that really a lot? Because it's making you think, well, all right, it says a lot. Have I just provided a lot? Have I given opportunity for a lot?
Well, and I think as we work harder and harder to move away from the expert model, it aligns really nicely to think, okay, like if we're talking about people in general, like people we're conversing with, people we're working with, that the shift should be towards them having more control, them having more autonomy in the conversation, and not have it be, like, here's what I think needs to happen. It's like, here's the information, here's the data, here's the scenario, and like what is it that you think would help in this situation. And I love that they actually point out that it's as important for young people as it is for adults, because I think it kind of feeds into like how oh gosh, I'm gonna blank. How do you know it? How can you show it? Like that whole thought about how we do AT, especially as the learner gets older, that it really does need to be them having the autonomy to make the choice. Otherwise, I can come up with 100 great recommendations and they're going to blow off 99 of them and be like, I have nothing to do with that. And building that in, to be able to say, like, I don't have complete control in this situation, and that I almost wish it would say like other people should have a lot of autonomy. Because in this case, I want the autonomy to do my job, of course, but I don't want the autonomy in a decision-making conversation to be resting solely on my shoulders, whoever they consider the expert in the room.
Right. Yeah. I think all of these beliefs give us this really great roadmap to leave the expert model in the dust and work our way through that. And how are we doing that? I think it's great. So we've talked about, in this order, 6 and 3. I love it. Who wants to choose another? Did someone have one that grabs them that you want to share? And if other people have read the book and you want to jump in and pop in and join the conversation, please feel free. If you want to listen, that's cool too.
I have a segue. I can jump from this
Please
one to a
jump.
different one. So as I was reading, and I actually I'm writing in my book because I'm like, I would love to write in it. And then when
I'm
I
going
pick
to
it
hang
up
up on you
again,
now. Hold on one second. Hold on. I'm going to get you out. You don't write in a book.
I
Okay, go ahead.
absolutely do.
Go ahead.
I highlight, I write, like this is mine. It's not going anywhere. But another part of Jim Knight's work that Sarah, that we talk about a lot, are the 5 simple truths for helping people. And as I was reading, I'm like, oh, that's a simple truth violation. Oh, that's a simple truth violation. And so number 3, the people should have a lot of autonomy, violates that when we do the thinking for them, they resist. So we shouldn't be doing all the thinking for the people that we're talking with. And then if they don't care about the goal, they won't try to achieve it. They won't care. Like, if it's not meaningful to them, why would they try to go after it? The other one that violated a bunch of the simple truth is number 1. Now I gotta go back to it. Hold on.
I see others as equal partners.
I see conversation partners as equals, and just the fact that people take it personally when we talk about the work that they do. So we have to really consider how we're talking about what we observe or the ideas we're providing, because they're going to say, well, if I would have known that, I would have tried it. And we don't want them to become, we don't want them to take it personally or offended. Doing the thinking for them. And then if they perceive us as putting ourselves as one up, they're going to resist too. So we really have to come into those conversations as equals. So looking back at what Alyssa was saying with those IEP meetings, and it really is still that us versus them mentality. So having a way to come in as, we're all here for the same purpose, is to help this student. Just because I'm a speech path and just because I'm an administrator, or just because I'm a teacher, just means that I have different background knowledge to contribute to this conversation. But my ideas, my input doesn't matter more than the parents' input, and really making them feel that they have a voice at that table.
I think that one is really interesting. That and you hit on a couple of the things that were in the guide for that. The main headings are status, talking about that. It's this kind of tiered situation in these conversations. Buy-in. So are people interested in buying in? Are they part of the decision-making process? Are they part of are they active in the conversation? And then the last heading talked about expertise. And again, that's a big fan. I'm a big fan of that, expertise versus expert. And I do like that. And it took a different swing in the question it asked. Have you ever felt the need to defend your expertise or authority in a conversation? If so, how did you do it and how did it feel? But that's interesting too. And I'm curious if that resonates for anyone.
I feel like you just sent me back to every single IEP meeting where I felt like I had to defend who I was or why I was making certain recommendations. I was like, what? Yeah.
Even if it's not explicitly said in a conversation, it may have been said in an introduction. You know, this is Mike, everyone. He's our AT consultant for the district. There is a statement in there that is right under the surface. That is, get ready. He's about to unleash an answer on you, and everybody can just kind of sit back and wait for the pearls of wisdom that just explode out. That rarely
nuggets.
explode out. Oh.
And about
the
that
other
moment,
question,
your mind goes blank.
Yeah, right. It does go blank. Exactly. It's so true, Cassie. The other question they ask, has there ever been times when it was difficult for you to recognize others' expertise in conversations or decisions? Note that made me sit and think. That was a stare it up at the ceiling moment. I was like, huh, that's interesting. Yeah, I wonder, has anyone had that experience?
So I think a lot of times in IEP meetings, we inadvertently set up parents to feel that way.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense. And so I think walking into those meetings, really helping them understand they bring expertise to the table that none of us will ever have for their children. And then, thinking about all of Jim Knight's work, I think is amazing. But thinking about those partnership principles and how can we help position them at the table so that they feel like they're equal partners, so that you don't set up that like us versus them feeling, but it's more of this idea that if we really want to support our students, we're going to do that together. And yes, I have some background, but you have so much more than I ever will.
And sometimes that becomes an opening salvo in a conversation. Like, I'm not the expert on this situation, all of you are. And so let's all work through it together. Because I think that there is even if we're talking IEP meetings, if we're talking coaching or leading a group in a presentation or a learning experience, I think that there's times where there is an expectation of where people might fit in this order. We'll go back to that idea of equal partners, and is that a cultural thing? Is that a learned experience? I can tell you, I've done presentations outside of our country and tried to do them in a group learning experience, and was pulled to the side and said, these people don't want that. They want you to tell them for the next hour. That's what they want. And it was an interesting shift because it's counter to the way I would like to approach things. It was that they are expecting an expert to tell them what to do. Oh, well, that's unfortunate. I mean, that was my first thought, was that's unfortunate, because that's really not what I'm interested in doing. But it's too late now, and you flew me all the way over here, so I guess I'll do that, and we'll find ways to sneak that in. Yes, Kelly says several countries, they're sit and get. There's an expectation. You're the expert in this scenario, and they're not, even though they are. Because I can tell you in that one experience, the expertise I shared was not relevant to the way that their culture did things. And I didn't know that. You can only know so much without being there.
I think you, Mike, were one of the first presenters who I did see shift it back to more of a coaching or more of just a conversational presentation, right? It, like, I think about the first time that we did AT Journey, and when someone asked a question, you're like, well, I don't know, what would you guys do in that scenario? Because I
Sarah
think
loves that. Here, she came back. Sarah loves that because I did it to Sarah. She asked the question. It's like, I don't know. What do you think?
And I just think that it stops people because they do expect whoever is presenting to know it all. And I think that that's something that when I was doing some PD for one of the school districts earlier in the school year, I flat out told them at the first session, it was like, you guys know your students better than I do. You know how your school operates better than I do. I can pull in things from outside and bring it in and we can apply it to your program. But this is definitely going to be a two-way street here. This is not me knowing it all, and I will never know it all. And I don't want to know it all. But I think a lot of people still expect to go to these sessions or get PD where it is, I have the answers. This is what you need to do. Change everything you've done. Go.
Right, exactly. And then how do you do it? Which leads us, it's like you're the queen of moving us to another. Belief number 2, not to do them in order or anything, but belief number 2, I want to hear what other people have to say. I mean, that is an active choice on your part to create an environment, sometimes against their expectations or experiences. You're creating an environment that says, this is the way we're going to try to do this. Do you want to join the fun? This is the plan. This is a plan, I should say. This is a plan. Does this work for us? And move people forward that way.
I think with this belief, I don't want to dominate it. So you guys just tell me to mute myself if I'm talking too much. Just tell me, just like, or cut me off. But I think with this one, it's a lot of, if you're talking the talk, you have to walk the walk. Because I think a lot of people will say, oh, I want to hear what others have to say. And to go back to that same group that I worked with earlier, we had a really big conversation on physical prompting and PECS and AAC. And there were like 75 of us in the room. And it was speech paths and teachers, OTs. I think we had a couple PTs, but we had a lot of paraprofessionals in that room too. They were the ones asking the questions, to the point where the director pulled me aside after and was like, the speech paths didn't say anything. Everyone who contributed to this conversation were paraprofessionals who are working with the students, and they never get to ask these questions or contribute their thoughts. And so I think that's one of those things that you can say it, but you also have to make sure you give opportunities to hear what people have to say and not just shut them down right away.
Right, exactly. I agree. And in those paths, finding those paths. Lauren says, Lauren, you can turn on your mic too and say it, or you want me to read it? Wait, Lauren has said, oh, hi, Lauren. Lauren, now you're muted. How upsetting. I brought you in and I called you out to speak. I'll read Lauren's while she's figuring. Oh. No. So Lauren has said, while she's figuring out her tech issue, I've sat on both sides of the IEP table. This is one of the biggest struggles I have had as a parent at my child's IEP meetings. I feel that even with my own colleagues, that I have to defend my position. It's the most uncomfortable situation. And frankly, I hate it. Yeah. And I think that, how about that idea, Lauren, of this idea of being potentially valued by an individual in one version of yourself, and then turning around and being a different version of yourself and being completely dismissed.
Yeah. I have to say, I think that's like one of the hardest things that's happened to me in being with my colleagues, like switching hats like that.
Yeah.
And it just feels like it, honestly, even just like saying it now, it makes my heart rate go up, and it like makes me so nervous. And I would say to my husband, like, you have to talk, dad perspective is going to mean more in this situation, because they're listening to you as a parent more than they're listening to me, even though like the credentials, like this is like,
Right.
I'm this kid's mom, and I know the special education system, and we have sat together on the same side of the table. And now
Right.
just even talking about the table as like that there's two sides of it,
Yeah.
it feels super yucky. And
It does, right. It does feel yucky. I agree.
and I kind of feel like if I'm feeling this way, how are the rest of our families feeling? Like, and they don't have the same perspective, and they've never worked collaboratively with this team in another way to be able to see another perspective. And I don't know, to me, I'm like, we just have so much work that we need to do with families. And it, again, it feels super yucky to have to send those like long emails of like why I might dissent to something, or why I want to continue the conversation or have another meeting, or when I say, well, what does my child think? My child's in 3rd grade, and he's 9. And obviously I've done a lot of self-advocacy work with him at home. And I'm like, well, what does he think? And they said, oh, this meeting is just for parents. This isn't for students. And I said, no. I was
No.
like, we've done the like I'm Determined curriculum, which is our state curriculum for self-advocacy. And I'm like, we're doing that with him, and I want him to participate. And I don't know, you have to like pull out all these like things from your bag, and then you feel ridiculous. But then when you're on the side as a professional, they're like, oh yeah, Lauren's talking about I'm Determined curriculum and this and that. And like, then they're like, oh, okay, Dr. Bonnet, blah, 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 this and that. And they like throw that term out.
Right.
But then when they're like, when I'm as mom, they're just like Max's mom. Like, like it's like worse. I don't know, like I'm the same person.
Yeah.
So anyway,
And I don't know if our
yeah.
parent experiences are better or worse for parents that don't sit in that dual role. Like because we
know.
don't have the knowledge to know what's different or bad or otherwise about the way the conversation is being pushed. But because they don't, sometimes I think their voice isn't valued in the conversation. And it's like, we just need you here to sign the paper. Like, sign that you were present, sign we give you your parent rights and you acknowledge that. But like, you can give us input when we get to the parent input section, and there you are. Which I think diminishes their voice, A, and then B, are they knowledgeable enough to know, A, there is a self-determination curriculum out there, whatever state you're in, and B, that the kid should be actively participating in some way in his IEP, whether that's sharing input through you as the parent, or coming for the first 5 minutes of the meeting and leaving, or as they get older, being present for the whole meeting.
So many options for participation. And that always makes me kind of bristle when a team's like, well, no, that student can't participate. And I always think that's such a ridiculous statement. Every student can participate to some level. And Alyssa just gives us a whole example of ways you could have somebody participate. That doesn't mean sitting in, I don't even want to participate in the whole meeting most times. So I get it. They don't want to be, I don't blame them. I don't usually want to be there the whole time. But finding a way to have them, even if it's a quick little snapshot of a recording. One of my favorite IEPs was the student's mom. Now I feel bad that I just reduced her. I apologize, Lauren. I reduced this woman to the student's mom. I'm sorry about that. I don't know her any other way. She held up her phone and she had recorded him right before she left in the morning to come to the meeting. What do you want your teachers to know about you? And it couldn't have been more than 45 seconds. It was the best 45 seconds of the whole meeting, because it took us down a conversation road that I don't know if we would have went down. And that is concerning if that's what it took, because I don't know that the team would have gotten there by themselves because they didn't value all those other voices. Lauren, if you want us to rally in front of your school for you and push the door down, you give us the signal and we'll go. I'm ready for that. Yeah, Kristen says in the chat that bringing the child's voice into the discussion is so important. Having them be part of it in whatever way they want to.
Yeah. And the most disheartening part was when I said that in a follow-up email, and I was just like, I'm really disappointed that you know, that the student's voice wasn't heard in this decision and we didn't consider him. So please, let's reconvene, because I want to hear from him. Like, we can run this plan by him, but I'm not signing anything until he says yes, because he's the one that comes home and he's like, oh, I have to go to this thing and it doesn't even help me at all. And they're just taking me out of my class. And, you know, then I don't get to do this other thing. And I'm like, yeah, but you're twice exceptional. You have the verbal skills to be able to tell me that. And what about our other students who, you know, don't have that ability to tell me that? And, you know, and all of us. And anyhow, I mean, again, it could be like my little soapbox, but it just, when he was saying, like, you know, to me, like, Mom, why do I have to go to this social skills group? It doesn't even help me. It's not good. And he's like, and then I'm just like taking my time away from like when I can just be with the other kids. And I was like, oh my God, that's like the worst. We're like putting in an opportunity that's like so contrived.
Mhm.
And then he's missing out on the genuine
On a genuine
opportunity
Yeah, right.
to work with other kids on his strengths too, you know? So I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Why are we doing these things? Why are we doing these things?
I don't,
So,
we don't have time to figure that out today. I mean, we could start to try to figure it out. I don't know if we can figure it out. If it makes you feel any better, Lauren, Lori's about to jump on the soapbox with you. Lori says in the chat, and I saw it, Lori, that Lori says her two biggest pet peeves when she walked into her child's IEP meeting and it was already written and they wanted it signed, just sign it. That's what Alyssa
Sign
said
it.
before. And the second one is they wouldn't let her out of her class to come to her own meeting, especially in high school, which is it is transition age at that point. And I mean, I'm also a believer, Lori, that by high school, I feel like the student should kind of be there
Yeah.
the whole time, if
She
possible.
got up sophomore year and just walked out of class and came down to the meeting. And they're all like, where are you going? I'm going to my meeting.
I have my meeting.
it is,
Yeah.
it's her meeting.
It's her meeting.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Who said that? Mary says kids are always in transition. That's so true, Mary. That's a really good point. Right? Transition is a big word and it happens all the time. We're also all in transition. We will all be transitioning to something else in 10 minutes. We will transition to another thing. So that same idea. Good point. All right, let's see. Other thoughts on that? What a great conversation.
Yeah, I was going to throw in there. So many of us lead professional development, and Carolyn and I are constantly saying, like, it's different for me to get up as a speech therapist and talk about it than it is for a student. And I know some of my very favorite conferences are ones that the keynotes are AAC users or their families. And part of what I love about it is sitting in those sessions and you look around and you can see the ahas in people's faces, or that reflection of like, oof, like I know I've done that and now I need to do better. And so I think the more that instead of us getting up and putting ourselves in those positions, is sharing those stories. Like we've been asking AAC users a lot lately, like what do you wish your teachers knew about you growing up? And some of their answers are just so powerful. And then I think too, if they'd been able to share that when they were still in school, how much of a difference would that have made for not only them, but for their peers sitting in the same classrooms as them?
I agree. Those little moments of sharing can color an entire day of learning. I so agree, Sarah. I've had 2 different opportunities to have conferences run for a whole day where they started with a keynote with users sharing their stories. I've been able to do this twice, and you're right. It changes everything that happened the rest of the day at a learning experience, because people are always reflecting back to that as you're talking about anything. This idea of how someone did it and the experiences they had, and things like Lauren describing her child and just the things that he's saying that tie into the bigger picture of what we're trying to do. That valuing others. Look, we've hit them all with just this, that others is equal partners. I want to hear what others have to say. I believe other people should have a lot of autonomy. I don't judge others. That one I don't believe we have spoken about yet. We haven't talked about 4 and 5. Belief 4, I don't judge others. Belief 5, conversation should be back and forth. It's not back and forth. It's just It's not a conversation.
So that's one of the things I love from the Fierce Conversation works, where they talk about the conversation is the relationship. So if you stop the conversation, then you're stopping the relationship and the connection, and you can't really move forward. So that's just something that's always stuck with me. I'm like, oh, even though this is bumpy, it's better to have the conversation keep going on and keep trying to learn more about it rather than just cut them off. Because if you don't want to have a relationship with the person anymore, like that difficult, like you're coaching another staff member and you just are kind of like, oh, they're not getting it right. And then you stop conversing with them, then it's over. The relationship is
Right.
over. So
You're never going to get it at that point.
yeah.
Yeah, so true.
And just to stem off of that, I think both 4 and 5 talk about a lot of things internally that we need to think about when we're coming to the table. But I think the last sentence of number 4 was there's a lot of different ways to roll our eyes with that actually don't have to do with our eyes.
It's
And
so
I was
funny.
like,
Yes, I wrote that too, Carolyn.
Oh.
That's awesome.
He was like, oh, I'm pretty animated as is. And so I was like, oh gosh, what else am I doing if I have to like not roll my eyes, but I'm sure I'm making some sort of face or tick or something that
Yes.
gives me away. So what can I do? And then in moving into 5 about not judging others, the person that they were reflecting on and right in that one talked about having judgments in disguise. So like steering the conversation or asking very pointed questions or just getting it so that, you know, I'm not judging, but it sounds like a judgy statement. And so being really cognizant of that, I was like, oh God, I need to think about all these things.
It is interesting. I thought of that too. That it did. I wrote that down too. The eye roll thing, and not every eye roll is an eye roll, and you know, it's the mannerisms. I've gone back and forth in video calls of keeping my camera on myself or taking myself out of the grid, and now I've realized I keep myself in the grid because I do find myself every once in a while just leaning back a little. I'm like, no, look, be more active in your paying attention. Don't settle back into something like that. That feels very judgy too. And it's not meant to be. It's just, it is interesting. Don't make assumptions. How do you give advice? That's the I don't judge others part. Yeah. To be non-judgmental, we need to let go of our desire to give advice, which goes back to what we talked about before, is answering a question with a question. Well, what do you think? Not giving advice if you're not asked for advice. I've tried this new approach to people when they're like, well, you haven't given your opinion. Well, you haven't asked for my opinion. Do you want my opinion? If you want my opinion, ask me. I will give you, and I have an opinion. I don't lack opinions, but it's just, I'm going to wait. I'm going to listen, and I'm going to think about what it is I'm going to share. What'd you put in there, Lauren? Where's that link take me? Fierce Conversations.
That's
Yeah,
the
the
all
Fierce
the everything
Conversations
about,
work.
Fierce Conversations. I put the book link in, and then Lauren got the full, like, everything you ever wanted to know about Fierce Conversations link.
We have one of our cognitive coaching, the trainers. She also works for Fierce Conversations, and we started a little bit of that work, and I read that book and I was like, okay, there's another perspective, and it was really good, particularly about those difficult to have conversations, like how to keep that going, how to approach them. And I thought, yeah, because I don't have many like planning or reflective conversations. Sometimes I feel like I'm having a lot of the more difficult ones. So anyway, just
That'll
another
put up in my
resource.
thing. I'll look at that when I go. I did one of the, you guys always blame me for spending your money. This just came this morning from Amazon. I bought a book that I read about it in the book as we're reading it. Why We Do What We Do, Understanding Self-Motivation. I feel like Carolyn was about to pull that up. Just came this morning in my little box of Amazon stuff. So continue purchasing things. Other thoughts? We have 2 minutes before the end. I think we did a nice job moving our way through that.
I highlighted that book so that I
Yeah.
remembered to order it.
Well, it's a nice small book too, so I'm excited to dig into it. I'll
thank
read it
goodness.
simultaneously. Other thoughts about this? This is a really good conversation. I'm really excited about this. I like the idea of what this book's bringing out for us.
Would you say it's a good conversation or a better
I'd say it
conversation?
is a good, but it could be better. And I'll see you on May 8th for the next conversation about this. So May 8th, can I say the motivation book again, Kristen? Sure, hold on. I threw it back in the box.
Carolyn,
Why
did I
we
see
do
you had
what
a
we do.
conversation with Jim Knight about like coming to our next meeting? Is he like gonna come?
I don't know,
I
Carolyn.
think, well, now that I have all the dates, I'm going to be sending him all of them. Please join us. Yeah, I was very excited about that.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. That was definitely cool. So hopefully we may see him, and I hope that we do. That would be wonderful. I would love that for the conversation. That would be great. So May 8th, we are on track to do the next 2 chapters of the book, whatever they are. Chapters 3 and 4. Chapter 3, listening with empathy. Chapter 4, fostering dialogue. Those are the 2 chapters we'll have. When we'll continue on this process. We'll do 2 chapters every month. And we'll continue this conversation and build towards moving through the book. So, top of the
I
hour.
just have to say,
Last
Mike,
thoughts?
that I'm so appreciative of this group and being able to feel comfortable and trusting with the folks in this group to be able to, talk about my own child and my experiences there, as well as a professional, because it's something I don't talk about with a lot of people or like a lot of groups, because it's kind of bumpy and it's not
Mhm.
great, but it certainly influences the work that I am doing and how I want to make things more accessible for families across the board. So I just really appreciate that. And I feel my biggest and greatest lessons, I feel like when I really am in the right mindset and I'm like really being a good listener and opening my mind and really seeing everybody as equal partners, I'm a better practitioner for it, and I'm getting my best lessons sometimes from the families of our students, because I might be there for 6 months, a year, even 20 years, but that's that person's child, sister, brother, niece, nephew, grandchild for their entire life. So I'm really just there for a small period of time and hoping to build capacity to support them across the lifespan.
Thanks, Lauren. I feel honored to be part of the group that you're willing to share that with. So thank you.
Aw, and thank you, Carolyn. Yes.
Oh, we're so nice, all of us. Look at us. You want to just kind of revel in our niceness for a minute? That's good. Other thoughts before we go? We're going to go head off to the next meeting you're now 1 minute late for.
Well, apparently Sarah and I have to miss May 8th, so I'm not inviting Jim till June.
All right, fair enough. All right. Very self-centered. There's probably
yeah,
a belief about that.
Very upfront about how selfish I will
Very
be on that
upfront.
one.
All right, fair enough. All right,
I mean,
everybody.
he did respond to your tweet.
He
So.
did. So there's
I
something
thought,
there. Too. It's all
He
right.
followed me on Twitter before I was following him on Twitter.
Ooh.
Cool. Yes,
Yeah, I was
Kristen,
like, oh, shoot, I'm not following
May
him. Yeah.
8th at 12 o'clock, Kristen. There you go. So we'll
That's
see each other the next time. For your normal AT town hall, we'll see everybody next Monday.
Perfect.
All right. Have a good rest of the
Sounds
week,
good.
everybody.
Have a great week.
Thank you.
See ya.